Good morning, Michael.
Hey,
How are you today?
good. Wearing my peak for Oaks today.
I know,
It's a
like
good
those.
time to be in Louisville.
I know those that don't know that Michael live in Louisville. What is this weekend in Louisville, Michael?
Well, this weekend in the world is called the Kentucky Derby. It just
That's right.
happens to be run down the street from my house. Oh, I got my hat too. Forgot my hat.
Do you? I forgot to put my hat out,
It's
Michael. I
it's my
should have
derby
brought
hat.
my hat out today.
Um,
Yeah,
so little. Well, the forecast is to be a little rainy today, so I don't think we're going to the track, but we do have a party to go to.
that's right. So, and for people that don't know, like yesterday was Derby, which a lot of locals go to. Today is the Oaks.
Yep.
And then tomorrow, the most money in 2 minutes bet in our any sports event happens tomorrow at the Kentucky Derby.
Yep.
So incredibly excited. And again, you guys, Michael lives like a mile and a half from the track. So he gets to see all kinds of interesting things and all there. And here I am in Cincinnati. And yeah, it's kind of gloomy today, Michael.
And you're wearing black, which is the opposite of Oaks. So
Oaks, I know. I didn't even think about it. I should have brought my pink stuff out for it. Well, it's great to be here, you guys. I know we missed you last week. A little update on that as well. I was supposed to have surgery last week. It didn't happen. So next week on the 13th in the afternoon, I have surgery, but I will be here for the show before I head to the hospital. So it's great to be back. And I want to just give a lot of time for today because a lot has come up even around the topic that we put out for today around NPS scores. So I want to read this amazing bio. A new dear friend of ours, Zack Hamilton, Chief Experience and Strategy Officer at Chatter by Stingray, is an experienced management veteran of more than 20 years. In addition to serving as an executive advisor to 200 plus retail brands around the world, he has successfully led go-to-market and enablement strategy initiatives across the Medallia retail ecosystem. And most recently, Zack was asked to join both the Forbes Business Council and Fast Company's executive board, cementing his status as an influential voice in the industry. So let's welcome Zack up with us. Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm looking forward to this Fresh Friday. Michael, I went and put on a cap for you. So I don't have a derby hat, so I'll just put a cap on. But I will say this, from being a fellow Midwesterner, from growing up in very rural Indiana, it is so good to hear two guys say Louisville, right? Being in Atlanta now, everyone's like Louisville or Louisville. We all know it's Louisville.
That's right. That's right. So, well, awesome, Zack. And, we start everything off, and we just read your bio, but want to ask you this simple question, buddy. Like, why do you do what you do, and what keeps you motivated as you do it? Because we heard a whole bunch of stuff in there, so that's what's great.
Yeah, it's a great. I love the question. I'll keep it very, very simple and brief. Many people have heard the story of how I got into customer experience, but I think it really resonates back to my childhood. My mom was a single mother of 4 until she remarried, and I'll never forget the experience that we had. My mom was working double shifts in a factory, and the 4 of us had to essentially maintain the house. And so my job was mowing the yard. And I'll never forget, our lawnmower quit. My mom took the 4 of us into the local department store at the time. And she looked at the salesperson and said, hey, look, I don't need anything with bells and whistles. I need a push mower that's going to be safe and cut the grass because my son has to mow the grass while I'm not home. And I just need to make sure he's safe. And at that moment, right, I remember the salesperson took my mom over to the highest model of lawnmowers and continued to sell her on all the bells and whistles and why she needed to increase her budget. And we all know that mom walk out of the store, that pissed off, grabbed the two youngest hands, which I was one of the youngest. And we just like beelined out of the store. We're like we're all four in the back of the car. This doesn't happen anymore. I'm sure we were all sharing the same seat belt. And the car ride was silent, right? Because we knew our mom was pissed. And so I'll never forget, we're at this red light. And she turned back to us and said, look, I don't care what you do when you grow up. Whether you are in the business world, you're a salesperson, you're in the medical professional, but please promise me you will never minimize the needs of your clients or customers in order to make your own paycheck. And that is what resonated so deep in me. I'm just like, this shit is deep, and I'm just worried about my kickball game at recess tomorrow. But guys, like those are the moments that live deep in us. So that resurfaced. So long story short, before I entered into the industry, I was leading a very well-known North American retailer, and we were launching the smartphone division. And what happened was our CFO said, Zach, it's not your job to deliver aspirational experiences. It's your job to convince them they want tier 2 devices so that we drive top line revenue. And it was that experience with my mom that all of a sudden came up, and I took the bold stance of, if we're going to minimize the needs of our customers to hit a short-term P&L, we have greater issues than for the velocity of smartphones being sold and returned. And it was in that moment I said, I have to be the loudest voice in the room and advocate for customers. I can no longer tolerate businesses minimizing customer needs and aspirational desires to hit a short-term P&L. And that's what's led me into really just being an advocate for all customers and employees now.
Well, I know I love it. And I know Michael probably is grinning like, is it going to be you the loudest one in the room or me the loudest one in the room about this, right? Like, right? So I think that's why, Zach, you and I hit it off, right? And it's so funny because we put the topic out there this week, right? I put it from a blog that you wrote around NPS, since your NPS score is 72. So what, right? Like, and then you also put something out there that said your business has changed, innovation, new business models, new channels, new customers. Yet your traditional experience management strategy has been run by the same playbook for 25 years.
Yeah.
And so I want to start with this, Stoke, and a nudge. Like, we're going to probably step on some people's feet that work in the industry, because let's talk NPS in particular. And you and I have had some lengthy conversations about this, and I know we're going to co-write and we're going to do a shared podcast this summer that Michael's going to pick our brains. So this is kind of the beginning of that. But when we put the topic out about this, I had no idea that yesterday, Inc. magazine releases an article that says, after 20 long years, it's time for CEOs to finally ditch this misguided metric. The 7 deadly sins of NPS tell us it's high time we get rid of the overused marketing tool.
Yep.
So is NPS dead, Zach?
Man, Fresh Friday is going to turn into Controversial Friday, because I think there are so many NPS evangelists. And here's what I'll say, right? Like, I've used NPS as a metric when I was a practitioner leading the North American retailer at Aaron's. It's a metric that essentially was created by Fred Reichheld at the Bain & Company. And I think Fred is a visionary of his time, right? He was able to really utilize the Net Promoter Score as a metric. Bain put a foundational framework around NPS with the inner and outer loop. And I think it served its purpose for really getting CEOs and leadership companies or leadership and within their specific companies to be thinking more about the customer, right? Because think about it, customer and employee, let me just put it this way. Experience does not live in your traditional business schools and MBA. And when you hear me reference experience, it is not a very siloed customer experience, employee experience, brand experience, product experience. I think that's another spinoff of we know as customer practitioners, one of the challenges is silos within an organization, but traditional experience management has helped create those silos by being very siloed in customer, employee, brand, products. I think NPS has been dying for a while. If you think about Fred just releasing Winning on Purpose and the secondary metric of earned growth ratio, he really released that because the fundamental basis of NPS was being bastardized. So let's talk about that for a second, right?
Well, I know yeah. So, I see Michael's wheels turning on that one.
Yeah. So if you think about the metric in a whole, I don't have a true issue with the metric, right? I always say, I don't care what metric your organization uses as long as it inspires you to take action, right? We know what gets measured should get improved. Doesn't always mean it does get improved. And so what's happened is CEOs only know metrics. They only know NPS. And so out of all the advisory work that I've done, the two questions I always get is what's our NPS and how does it compare to X, Y, and Z, meaning the top three of my competitors. And depending on what those responses are, they're either satisfied or not satisfied. And then the effect of CEOs only talking about those two questions is when practitioners go to make their OKRs for the year, for example, they set their goals on, I'm going to increase my NPS by 2 basis points by the end of the year. And then the down cycle of that is I've spent more time in meetings where experienced practitioners are trying to figure out how do we gamify the survey. So what order in which we're going to ask the NPS question? Can we switch a couple words in the actual likelihood to recommend question to get a higher score? Can we put the smiley faces of green up by the promoter of 10 and red down there, or adding not likely at all or very likely at all, like all this gamification to drive the score. And then they set goals, right? Especially if you're in a location-based business, they're setting goals that you have to achieve this specific goal by the end of the year because you're on a performance-based compensation plan. And so what happens is everyone gamifies the score. Gamification of score baking on the front line, gamification on what the score really is. And so what's happened is when I say it's been bastardized is everyone drives the score versus and it's really a lagging indicator. And it's a lagging indicator of what are the actions that we have taken that have driven this metric. So everything becomes on this lagging indicator. We all know everyone's going to hit it. And practitioners right now, I think this is why CX and just experience in general, as practitioners, we're struggling to influence our organizations greatly, is because too many brands increase their NPS by 4 or 5 basis points, but yet they're left holding the empty bag of no business outcomes. They're not driving same-store sales. They're not driving top-line increase. They're not reducing customer churn. And so now it's becoming questioned around, is this really just a cost center or is NPS really the right thing? And I think it is the experienced professional of the past that latched onto NPS didn't truly understand the system around it. And that's caused kind of the death of NPS.
Michael.
There's so much to dig into, right? So, I'm an educator, really, if we're talking about who I am. And, there's a an ongoing, eternal, will never be solved conversation about testing, standardized testing for kids, right? And I feel like this is a good metaphor of you have to do something to be able to decide what the standards are and do the kids know it or not, right? And you have to have something that shows you where the schools who need the most help are. But you create a test and then you start teaching to the test. And then you've bastardized your education system because you're spending all of your energy on teaching to a test, which may or may not be what those kids need for them to be functioning members of society. But yet you have to do that to be able to get the money that you need to be able to have the education system that you want, right? So there's a systemic thing happening. So I think the same thing is true for any metric as big as NPS, right? At what point are you creating something with good intentions, let's say, and then it becomes something that actually starts driving behavior that is not helpful or behavior that is not what the metric intended for it to drive.
Yeah, Michael, I think that's a really good point. And to me, NPS is really a brand metric, right? It is a top level brand metric. And so one of the shifts in our foundational belief when I was leading at Aaron's was we stopped really looking at the metric and we started looking at the key levers or those key drivers into the metric. And so a lot of times, for example, for us and on the front line, it was really around that sales effectiveness or customer engagement model, right? What do you train as a foundational way to serve your customers when they walk into your store? And everyone has essentially their core engagement framework, right? Macy's is called Magic, and others are called Sales, and it's a moniker, right, of what it stands for. And for us, it was really around: are we greeting our customers? Are we understanding their needs? Did we recommend a product? And then did we tell them what was next? What can you expect post lease? And so what we found as we started to really benchmark the behaviors that our frontline sales folks could control, right? You can't control NPS. There's too many macroeconomic impacts to NPS, which is why it's really a brand metric. And if you are currently setting NPS goals at a store level basis, you're actually just kind of demoralizing your entire organization. Because let's think about over the last 3 years since the pandemic, there are macroeconomic pressures like supply chain and labor shortage. Your frontline store manager cannot control those things, but those are the things that are impacting net promoter score. And so they're being benchmarked on outside influences they can't control. So we started focusing on overall satisfaction, like operational satisfaction, right? How well did our frontline team engage with you when you walked into our store? So it was very, very role specific. We made sure that we had the right metrics, that we were based on who was performing in that role. What are the things that they can control? And what we noticed was we almost had a more than 30 point NPS increase over 18 months, but we stopped talking about NPS. We were focused on the behaviors that role specific they can control. What are the actions that I can take within my specific role to deliver better experiences?
Well, so in that case, NPS worked.
Well, no. Because if you think about on the front line, we didn't talk about NPS.
But the metric worked to reflect that good things were happening for the right people for the right reasons, and that was reflected in that score.
Well, and I think that's the difference, and Zach, you've heard us talk about it at Mophie. Michael and I are on this crusade around, this experience ecosystem, right? Yep. And I want to ask a question that's going to keep digging into this, but you and I read this same study, Zach, that Accenture put out that said, that brands spend $1.6 trillion per year on bad customer experience, right?
Yeah.
And $640 billion in customer experience will be spent in 2022. but yet the American Consumer Satisfaction Index score continues to decline.
Yep.
So we're spending more money on it, $640 billion just this year, but it's declining. And I do think it comes back to this premises of what you and Michael are digging into here. Michael, and I love the analogy around the education system like that. But what's the difference then between an experience system versus experience management? Because I think how we talk about an ecosystem is a system, an ecosystem, because there's a system and a process that has to be built versus what, unfortunately, 25 years, I was just at a conference and it's still talking about that experience management piece. So would love to hear from both of you on that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to Shawn, right? It's that one piece that I put out there around, look, your business has changed. We all know business has changed and everyone's innovating. They're driving new business models. There's new channels and new customers. But what's happening is, right, there is a traditional experience management framework that the pioneers of our industry have put out there. And it has become largely adopted because it can scale up velocity. And what's happened is that playbook, although there has been some tweaks to it, they're still operating in the same steer co-meeting type processes. They're still operating with the same type of organizational structure, right? So what's happening is the framework that the pioneers in the industry have led for 25 years is not aligning to what's happening in business today, right? Businesses are adapting or have adapted that agile methodology. When you think about operating lean and efficient organizations to be able to pivot and change as fast as what our customers do. But that traditional experience management playbook has never been updated. And there's been many of us that have tried to update it, but unfortunately, there's also analysts like a Gartner and a Forrester who've not adopted the changes either. And so the pioneers of the company want to make sure that, hey, we stay within the boundaries that's going to allow us to score high on a Gartner or Forrester analyst report.
Yep.
And I've heard it from very, very many executives. There's a very large global brand here in Atlanta that has said our traditional experience management framework has failed us. Our executive leadership team no longer buys into customer experience because we are not able to deliver the results that we truly believe delivering great experiences will give, but the industry hasn't moved with us. And so it takes me back to, and I was talking to a CEO and he said, look, my NPS is 72. This was the basis for the blog. I'm not for sure the value we're going to get out of this call. And I said, so effing what? Mm-hmm. Like when I take a look at all the sentiment analysis of your program, the things that are trending negatively, the same topics that are trending negatively this month have been trending negatively for the last 18 months. And so you are not creating that competitive moat that you want to create because you're not delivering better experiences. Yes, you have a great brand and you've built great brand equity, but that doesn't mean you aren't delivering experiences that are driving frictions and your customers don't dislike. And quite frankly, part of this is also the lock-in effect that you have in your business.
Yeah. So what's scary though, because I want Michael to give a viewpoint on this from what you're talking about, and Zach, you spent a lot of time in the retail space. And what I don't think a lot of people realize is how further along retail is than healthcare. Right. And so, Michael, give your perspective on this, experience management versus system and how it's played out in healthcare, because, we've heard people say, we have a 90 NPS in healthcare. Why do we need to focus on it? But yeah, we still have really bad experiences.
Yeah. I mean, it's And for me, it's even more complicated, because when you really talk with, if you get out of numbers and shift to humans, is what we're talking about, right? And you talk to people. One of my favorite quotes in healthcare from a pharmacist was, no one gets into pharmacy to count pills. People don't become phlebotomists to draw your blood because they, want to play with your blood. There could be a science part of it, and they have to enjoy that part at some point, right? But more often than not, I enjoy making people relax when I'm drawing their blood. I enjoy knowing that I am helping them be healthy by fulfilling this prescription. So few times do we actually hear people say, I'm in this for the money, or I'm in this because it's a job and I can't do anything else, right? And so when you get back to the people side of it, and you can harness that, and I don't want to get like the whole try to like find your purpose, find your passion. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying give people a space to be able to put their themselves into something that has meaning, and then that's where the good things happen, right? So it is a hard business case to say, if we've got this great NPS score, why should we worry about customer service? And I think that's where the dashboard comes in of metrics, right?
Yeah.
So you need to really work on a dashboard of all kinds of stuff. Some stuff that lags, some stuff that's immediate, stuff that's focused on the consumer, some that's focused on the employee, some that's focused on loyalty. Like, there needs to be a really nicely designed dashboard that tells that whole story. So that is not just about, well, our NPS score is fine, right?
Yeah.
Because NPS is a great concept. Would you recommend this to a friend? That is a great starting place.
Yeah.
Fantastic starting place.
Yeah. Two things I want to double click on quickly. If you think about NPS is a system. If you truly look at it, it's the net promoter system. Everyone became obsessed with the score. When we think about healthcare, right? The healthcare business has just, if we think about for the last 50 years, they've never had to change. They had the locked in effect. It wasn't until like Amazon started to come and say, hey, look, we can do your monthly prescription straight to your home. You don't have to go to your local thing. You think about telehealth, right? Telehealth was out there significantly longer than the pandemic that just hit. And let me give you an example. So one time I went and got a flu shot, and I got it at my local Walgreens, right around the corner from my house. Very, very bad experience. I waited in line for forever, and there was no place for me to give feedback. The following year, I went to my local Kroger. That's just a little bit further, but I was going and picking up a couple groceries. I saw that there was no line. I got my flu shot. Incredible experience, right? So now when I think about, hey, where am I going to go get my next flu shot? It really is about, I know I'm always going to go back to Kroger. Now, does Kroger have opportunities to be able to listen to their customers better and, innovate on their experiences? Absolutely. Right? Everyone does. And it's my mission to figure out, how can I help take the principles that we've learned in retail and go into healthcare? The other thing that I want to quickly double tap into is when you really think about customer loyalty, it's all about trust. Trust is rooted in action. And so one of the reasons why I left traditional experience management is I didn't see the urgency to really change the foundational principles. And I said, look, I will no longer compromise who I am in order to stay in a culture that's not willing to adapt. And that's why I joined, Simon Foster, the CEO and founder of Chatter. Is there was one thing that we both, and Shawn and Michael, the three of us, have in common is we truly believe customer experience is about action. And we are actually building what we call an experience action index. So we are really looking at what are the actions that we have taken. So our goal is, how do we surface up the right actions to the right role at the right time in order for frontline or anyone in the organization to take action. And now we're measuring that from a business outcome perspective. How do we help your brand stack wins through driving great experiences through the action index? And so you're going to hear traditional experience management companies and the pioneers talk about, oh, we're collecting billions of signals on a monthly basis. And what they're saying is we're over fatiguing our practitioners with data. And yet what's really interesting is, hey, that's great. We're collecting all these signals too, but our technology actually delivers automated actions. And oh, by the way, if you take a look at the business impact that our brands are having, significantly better than that traditional experience management.
Well, I love it, and we could keep talking and talking here. I want to give for a couple things here from some guests, and I love this one, Michael. You'll appreciate this from Tony. Shawn Nason, NPS or OSAT in healthcare should be connected to the health outcomes of the organization. Yes and yes.
Yeah.
like no more. And hopefully we've heard Medicare is going to start moving that way some in the next few years. But this is a question for you, Zach. If there was one parameter that could ever replace, let's assume it could be the NPS, what would it be and why?
Yeah, it's a good question, Samar. First, I just want to shout out Tony. So Tony's a former colleague of mine. Tony is brilliant. She was a true operational nurse. So she understands healthcare. She knows what it's going to take to go and revolutionize healthcare. And Tony and I have had a lot of incredible questions. So glad to see, Tony, your point coming in. Shawn and Michael, you should connect with her. She's amazing. When I think about what's going to change NPS and be the new truth, I think there's really two things. One is really around the action index. What actions are we taking as an organization to deliver better experiences? The other one is around infatuation with your brand. I think traditional customer loyalty is dead. It's no longer about, hey, I'm going to exchange my information with you to get a $5 off discount. To me, it really is around, if you think about your own specific life, and Shawn, you and I have talked about this, there's about 2 to 3 brands that you really stay infatuated with your entire life. And you have those peaks and valleys of your level of infatuation, right? And so for me, it's Ford. I've always driven a Ford. I had that period of low where I explored a Jeep, but I traded that thing in after a year. You all can see my infatuation with Jordans. That will never change. And so and Apple's another one. We all have the brands that we're infatuated with. And so if a company truly wants your lifetime loyalty or value, how do you keep customers infatuated with your brands? Through innovation, driving optimizations and enhancements into your experience. I call it experience as a strategy, not experience management. I
love it. Love it. Well, like I said, we could keep going. But Zach, thanks for being here. And as I did mention to everybody, the table's going to be turned a little bit. Michael's going to take Zach and I on an interview journey here at the end of May, and we're going to release 5, 6, 7 episodes of a podcast around just this whole conversation. We wanted to give a tease to the audience today, and we'll dive deeper into it and bring more information in. But really glad, Zach, really great to have you on here with us today. If you want to get a hold of Zach, go out on LinkedIn. He's out there, and it is, as you say, Z-A-C-K. You will see he posted a funny about this yesterday, and that's how he spells Zack Hamilton. I follow him, so make sure to go out there and follow him. And Zach, if you'll hang on, Michael and I are going to close up, and we'll come back and say bye to you.
Yeah, it's been real. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Well, Michael, enjoy your weekend. I hope you do get to go to the track at least today or tomorrow. But for everybody else, listen, you can reach Michael and I at mofi.co or ShawnNason.com. You can send us an email at hello@mofi.co or hello@ShawnNason.com. As I mentioned, the podcast Combustion Chronicles will be releasing that special series with Zach this summer. Connect with Michael and I on LinkedIn. But most importantly, that if you play in this experience ecosystem that we've been talking about today, we want you here on Experience Friday Live, where we talk about the good, bad, the ugly, and even some controversial things that are coming about. So, Michael, have a great weekend. I am so excited for you and the family to just go enjoy.
Yeah.
All right.
Enjoy. Today's the Oaks, y'all. So back those Phillies.
Yes. Oh, and next week, I did forget to say this, Michael. Michael and I are going to be in Boston at the CX Forum. And I'll be speaking there, but Michael and I will be there. If you live in Boston, come see us, reach out to us, and I can make sure you get there. But other than that, we will talk to you all later.